Et notre prochain sujet is another big one parce que les previews pour Resident Evil Requiem, the final previews, ont été publiés hier. Donc, faisons un petit preview, round-up pour le prochain jeu dans la série venant de Capcom que j'anticipe grandement. Hein? Pour ceux qui ont vu mon Spotlight 2026, c'est mon troisième jeu le plus anticipé aux côtés de Mina the Hollower, GTA 6. Fuck, j'ai déjà oublié mon top 5. Saros et Wolverine. Fait qu'on va voir ce que certains créateurs, ce que la presse pense de Resident Evil Requiem. Puis après ça, on va aller écouter le preview venant de IGN. On débute avec Alex Donaldson chez Eurogamer qui dit: Anyway, my point is, it's not survival horror as Grace and pure action as Leon. There is clearly more to both. We'll need to see the final game to truly understand that balance. But what I see here is not a game lacking in identity because it is doing multiple things. Il y en a beaucoup qui se posent la question de ben là, est-ce que ça ne sera pas Resident Evil puisque là t'as plus action d'un côté puis plus survival horror de l'autre. Semblerait-il que ce n'est pas une problématique, du moins de la perspective de Eurogamer. Rather, I see a game supremely comfortable in its place in the series, bringing together the best of Resident Evil. After I play, Requiem director Nakanishi tells me this is how they viewed the project internally, with the remakes of Resident Evil 2 and 4 as North Star templates, qui sont les remakes qui ont le mieux été reçus aussi, là. Bringing the two distinct styles of Resident Evil together in order to create something more focused on the series' strengths, not jumbled, not less. Although this final hands-on preview can be considered mission accomplished, I left it far more excited for RE9 than I went in. I think that Mad Lot might just do it again. And certainly, with its varying modes of play and dizzying pendulum tempo, it feels like a fitting tribute to 30 years of Resident Evil's brand of survival horror. I'm properly desperate to get my hands on the final thing. Fait que très encourageant ça. Yeah, mais on va parler de la PS5 Pro aussi, Block, parce que on a les specs pour PS5 Pro. J'enchaîne avec Polygon, preview écrit par Jen Gleanan qui dit: With Requiem, the team at Capcom has promised players a supercut of the franchise's most beloved games after spending 3 fun-filled hours mangling corpses and consuming every green herb I see. I can confidently say that it delivers on that promise and is shaping up to be a truly superlative entry in the series. Now, I'm left feeling like a big baby chunk hungry for more. Okay. Et Kotaku's Kenneth Shepard a écrit: Capcom says the dichotomy between Grace and Leon's play styles is meant to give the game a cadence of hours of tense atmosphere punctuated by flashes of violent catharsis. And that was most evident when I swapped back to Leon and walked through the same area I'd spent a long time sneaking around as Grace, with a newfound confidence radiating from the shotgun in my hands. When playing as Grace, I kept finding cabinets that were warped beyond opening and wondered why Capcom let me interact with them if they were all just going to be distractions, only to find that when I returned here as Leon, they opened when I used my hatchet on them. These were never meant for her, and were instead a reminder that I would walk through these halls in a different context much later. J'aime le fait que dans ce preview-là, ça n'a pas été juste on te fait jouer Leon ou on te fait jouer Grace. Non, c'est on te fait jouer les deux parties pour get a sense of the full fucking game, là, you know? Fait que les previews donnent vraiment un portrait du overall experience. Fait que c'est bien beau, moi qui vous lis tout ça. On va aller écouter le preview de IGN pour voir ce que eux ont pensé de leur temps avec ce preview build de Resident Evil Requiem.
With the triumphant return of Leon Kennedy, Resident Evil Requiem is forced to straddle an
Jeff and
awkward
Wendy,
line
point with the
between
fantasy
all-out
critic.
action
Hey,
and methodical
let's
survival
go.
horror. I'll be honest, before getting my hands on the game and seeing the transition in action, I was extremely skeptical that Capcom would be able to create a coherent experience involving both Leon and Grace, the latest highly vulnerable protagonist.
Hey, over here.
The switching between their polar opposite styles sounds jarring, which is almost never a good thing. And although it's been a while, it's not like we haven't been burned by Capcom's desire to push the series towards action before. But I'm pleased to share that, from my all too brief 3 hours of hands-on time with Resident Evil Requiem, not only does this design really work, but there's also a lot more going on than just a...
Est-ce que t'es con, Alexis? Aïe, aïe, pour les audio listeners, Alexis il a juste posté un Photoshop de invitation VIP avant-première, le Hypedcast. Hey, c'est parfait ça, shout out. Shout out Alexis. Vous l'avez pas vu là, chat, hier quand on a enregistré le Hypedcast, mais Alexis était juste genre dans le coin là.
merging of Resident Evil's greatest hits.
That's too effective.
My playtime started with a short test drive of Leon, and Resident Evil 4 muscle memory kicked in immediately. Make no mistake, this plays just like the recent remake, enhanced with some new clever additions suitable for a veteran badass. Leon is more handy than ever, with a deadly hatchet that he can swing mercilessly added to his regular arsenal.
Hey man, c'est tellement
Leon
violent,
can also
j'adore.
heave axes found in the world, can perform new contextual finishing moves, and finally wield the violent chainsaw.
Chris the
There was
barrel
once a time when
die,
Leon
man.
feared the chainsaw, but now Leon has become Chainsaw, destroyer of ghouls. After a short 15 minutes, the gameplay shifted perspective to Grace Ashcroft, Requiem's second protagonist,
Ok.
picking up her journey immediately after
Demande
the
si c'est
events
juste pour
of the
preview
previous
purposes,
demo
c'est
I
vraiment
wrote about
segmenté de
in
même,
August
genre
last
des
year.
bursts de
Grace
15
and Leon are
minutes.
polar opposites, gone with the tense gunfights and forward momentum of Resident Evil 4, as I was immediately thrust into what felt like a sterile, white, clean version of Resident Evil 7. For the next 2 hours, I explored the Rhodes Hill Chronic Care Center, a somewhat traditional Resident Evil mansion that contains much of what you might expect among its rooms and corridors, but with plenty of new surprises. Surprises that mostly arise thanks to Grace's abilities, or rather, lack thereof. Much like in the previous demo, Grace's section was focused almost exclusively on survival horror. She is armed with a small pistol that she finds in the environment, but her firepower and combat skills are negligible compared to our favourite floppy-haired icon. Where Leon can roundhouse kick zombies in the face, Grace makes do with a clumsy push. Leon is all-out assault, but the best course of action for Grace is slow and deliberate stealth. Because if you do try to take some of the new enemies head-on, you're gonna have a bad time. Last year's demo revealed a new and much celebrated stalker enemy, a towering, hunched, bug-eyed warden. But even within the span of my short 3-hour session, I was introduced to another two, giving me
Je
the
pense qu'elle a
impression
dit
that
qu'il voulait
Resident
utiliser
Evil
les
Requiem
sections,
would have
les
one
Leon section
Mr.
et
X
Dungeon
or
reliées
Nemesis
avec
like
Grace sections
persistent
pour
threat,
pouvoir
but
pacing, genre
rather
de voir ce que ça
several
va donner.
smaller pursuers
Yeah.
that seem to guard certain wings of the Rhodes Hill Chronic Care Center. Most notable was a hulking mass of blubber called Chunk, who burst through the wall and into my heart as he slowly but surely ground his way through the halls, stairwells, and doorways in pursuit of me. Uniquely,
ça doit être
Chunk
trippant.
fills the
Le
space
combat a
entirely, so your only
juste l'air
chance of
trippant,
survival
man.
is to find and navigate loops built into the level design in order to outmaneuver the walking lardass. It's a clever design that generates a somewhat living, breathing wall of terror, and one you can't simply sidestep or combat roll away from.
Aïe aïe.
Much like the stalker I escaped last year, Chunk is cleverly implemented into the context of traditional safe rooms. Where the room's bright light caused the previous stalker pain, Chunk simply can't physically squeeze his sheer mass through the door, making sure that there's a logical in-world justification for a room of respite. As well as Chunk, I also ran into a 7-foot-tall hulking unit masquerading as a chef, who, until he noticed me, was completely focused on his chopping chores. This soon-to-be stalker wasn't yet in searching mode, rather he was fulfilling, I assume, his pre-infection duties. And this kind of behavior isn't unique to the chef. It turns out in Resident Evil Requiem, the traditional zombie fodder is just as much a star of the show. You see, zombies not only talk now, but also have their own personalities. The undead are no longer unfortunate generic lost souls, but rather husks that retain a smidge of living personalities, hanging out in the space that they once occupied. There's the lounge singing shrieker in the bar area, who, before being alerted, entertains herself by belting out a ditty.
Infectés, genre, ils ont des réflexes.
There are the zombies who are formerly patients in recovery that insist on wheeling around their drip stands, which are then, unsurprisingly, wielded as a weapon when they get aggroed. Some zombies hate loud noises and will repeatedly yell at you if you even so much as smash a vase. And then there's the one that loves nothing more than turning lights on and off until you rudely interrupt him. If it's not clear by now, Resident Evil Requiem, aside from being packed with action and fear, is also now funny, something that the series has never, at least intentionally, achieved before. As Grace creeps around the hospital, there's the continual threat that around every corner awaits horror, or laughter, or sometimes even both. When you can hear the undead nattering away in a room you know you have to enter to achieve your next objective, it's hard to know whether to be scared or have a good chuckle. On paper, this sounds like it could be awful. I'm aware of that, but honestly, it's so good. I laughed so hard when I caught one particular dopey zombie red-handed, both literally and figuratively, lifting a large and importantly red canister to throw my way. I'm sure you can imagine what happened next.
Yeah,
the zombie
ML,
fodder
fucking
isn't just
Boulder
around to
moments.
entertain and quickly be disposed of though. As Grace, the undead are a significant threat.
À quel point que c'est random à la fin, là.
Their fallen corpses also pose a significant conundrum, as they have the ability to turn into blister heads, a reinvention of Resident Evil Remake's Crimson Heads for a new generation, that reanimate with a bulbous cranium and become significantly tougher to take down. Fortunately, Grace has a new tool at her disposal. A hemolytic injector that weaponizes the buckets of blood lying around the place. Seriously, it's everywhere. Creating a lethal injection that can be used as a preventative measure against blister heads when injecting a fallen enemy, and as a stealth attack against anything that's still moving. Beyond the new enemy types, playing as Grace does feel familiar if you've played either Resident Evil 7 or Resident Evil 2, although obviously it leans more towards the latter if you choose to play as Grace in third person. You're exploring a huge mansion with locked doors, there are obtuse puzzles to solve, antique coins to find that can upgrade your equipment, Mr. Raccoons to shoot, safe rooms with a typewriter for saving and a storage box for inventory management, and so forth.
Classic.
Leon, however, can brute force open certain doors that Grace can't, and is far more aggressive with combat compared to Grace's methodical stealth. You can also choose to play as Leon in first person, though after a brief dabble, it felt very unnatural to do so. I can't help but think Capcom built the game with Leon in third person and Grace in first person in mind, but it's hard to complain about more choice, despite knowing deep down the development team surely had a preference. My demo ended with a second, all too short stint as Leon, which allowed me to revisit sections of the care center I'd previously experienced with Grace. Interestingly, this section demonstrated perhaps my favorite element of this hybrid experience. Leon is also exposed to some of the tougher combat encounters that I'd suffered through as Grace, although the perspective, much like my viewpoint of choice, is very different. When I met Chunk as Grace, I immediately retreated and was forced into a game of cat and mouse. The threat is intimidating and encourages you to tread lightly. As Leon, however, emboldened by my newly acquired shotgun, I felt instantly trigger happy, unloading shells right up into Chunk's face and launching hatchet attacks on his head as part of a fight that felt somewhat reminiscent of the El Gigante encounters in Resident Evil 4. To Grace, Chunk and his fellow creeps are stalkers. To Leon, they're targets. This ethos was reaffirmed when taking on a wave of blister heads with Leon at the end of my playtime. With Grace, I waited patiently for a stealth attack opportunity. With Leon, I was hurling hand grenades and throwing axes for fun. This year is the 30th anniversary of the Resident Evil series, so it feels like no coincidence that 2026's Resident Evil Requiem is combining the best ideas of the saga into what appears to be a fantastically constructed tribute to everything that makes the series so great. Do you like tense survival horror? It's here. Want to go all guns blazing with intense action and a quip-obsessed hero? You get to do that too. Do you prefer playing Resident Evil games in first or third person? Doesn't matter, you can do either. All of these choices, along with my fears of a jarring play experience being mostly squashed, make it easy to believe that Capcom's bold move to have its cake and eat it is going to pay off in a big way. If you like that video and want to find out more about Resident Evil Requiem, why not check out my previous preview where I discuss another stalker enemy in great detail. And for everything else, be sure to stick with IGN.
And there you have it, mesdames et messieurs. Resident Evil Requiem. The hype is real. Comme Blocky dit, le jeu sort dans exactement un mois, soit le 27 février 2026 sur PlayStation 5, Xbox Series, Switch 2 et PC. Looking forward to it. Might take off work to play this game, chat. Parce que ça me hype excessivement. More on that in a few weeks. Autre affaire qui est ressortie là, suite à ce preview blowout pour Resident Evil Requiem, c'est la performance du jeu sur PS5 Pro. Parce que le RE Engine, oui, c'est très polyvalent du côté de Capcom avec tous les jeux qu'ils ont développés avec cette engine-là, mais dans certains cas, ça a de la misère. On a les specs pour le jeu sur PS5 Pro qui sont sortis, confirmé qu'il va runner à 4K 60 FPS. Fait que très encourageant pour console performance, du moins sur PS5 Pro. Je me demande pour les autres systèmes, ça ressemble à quoi? Should your monitor support higher frames, you'll be able to take advantage of frame rates up to 120 FPS. Nakanishi said there will be an advantage of 90 FPS on the system. Fait que pour les gens là qui ont une PS5 Pro, well, there you go. That's something to look forward to. Hâte de voir aussi le reste. Là. My God, Leon a l'air magané sur cette image-là. Hâte de voir le reste des specs pour RE Requiem. Dans cette ère moderne du gaming. Phase où est-ce que tu vas chercher des ressources pour améliorer ton personnage, améliorer tes guns, tout le kit. Puis après ça, t'as comme le offense phase qui consiste à aller chercher le shield breaker ou whatever, le genre d'espèce d'épée qui va te permettre d'entrer dans la base ennemie. Puis après ça, il faut que tu actives des bombes dans la base ennemie